Welcome home, brave heroes. I'm Ash, this is AxianQuest, and today we are taking a look at the new decks offered by HeroQuest Homebrew creator Axian Spice. That's right, we're looking at AxianQuest's Dungeon Events Deck 2, as well as Heroic Skills 2, and the brand new Interludes deck. These decks are 100% AI free using the artistic talents of Dean Spencer, as well as a plethora of icons that are in the public domain from gameicons.net, are completely compatible with all of Axian Spice's other decks, and are modular, so you can use one of the decks, two of the decks in any combination, three, all of the decks. You could take out cards and just use parts of each deck if you truly wanted to, and this is something that I truly appreciate about Axian Spice's creations. We're going to go ahead and take a look at the Dungeon Events 2. Just as a comparison, our first dungeon deck is about this big on the left here. Right deck is a few cards smaller. However, looks like there's a different material being used for the cards themselves. After double checking by counting, it does seem that there are slightly fewer. This is 46 cards in the original dungeon deck. The new dungeon deck has 40, but that's 40 counting the instructions card, but we're going to go ahead and read off what the dungeon events are. Whenever there are no monsters on the board, on his turn, Zorgan rolls a die. If the result is 5 or 6, he draws a card and plays the results. Before the game, Zargon may decide to use the full deck or prepare a deck with only a selection of cards. And if a hero reaches 0 MP, they roll 1 die to move, 1 die to attack, and 2 dice to defend. Some cards require to randomly determine a hero affected by the event. Assign a number to each hero and roll a die to determine which hero is affected. Ignore and re-roll a die result higher than the number of heroes. Alternatively, you can simply make a temporary deck with the hero cards and draw 1. Some cards reference the appearance of one or more creatures like the Goblin Thief, the Vampire Bat, the Rat Swarm, etc. These creatures don't need a miniature to be represented. Their event begins and ends within Zorgan's turn, with the heroes reacting immediately as described in the card during Zorgan's turn. And when a monster's name is bolded, it means Zorgan places the corresponding miniature on the board and uses it as a regular monster. Zorgan is the player controlling the monsters, and these cards use a standard 1d6 terminology, as well as MV for movement, AD for dice rolled to attack, DD, BP, and MP accordingly. Pretty simple stuff, but let's take a look at the Dungeon Events 2. The Blight. 2 Skull Blights appear at the dungeon entrance and play immediately. So right off the bat, this gives you a confirmation that this deck is fairly updated to meet the requirements for Homebrew to be compatible with the newest expansions of HeroQuest. Skull Blights are some of my favorite enemies in the new HeroQuest, and kind of some of my favorite enemies of all time. They're like zombie swamp things. I love them. They're very grim, dark enemies, and yet they have this cartoonish look about them that just makes them perfect for whatever setting. Moving on, the Dark Tongue. The heroes find an indecipherable inscription on a wall. It details the location of a treasure, but not the path to it. Only an orc, goblin, or ogre can decipher the inscription. If the group includes an orc, goblin, or ogre, Zorgan must reveal the exact location of the largest treasure in the quest. Draw another card if there's no treasure in the dungeon, or if there is no Zorgan player, which there may not be if you're using the Infinity Dungeon from Axian Spice. The Dwarven Inscription. The heroes find an ancient runic inscription on a wall. This time, only a dwarf can decipher the runes. The Runic Seal. Only a hero with the ability to cast spells may touch the seal to activate it. If you roll a 1 on a d6 after determining that your spellcaster will try to activate the seal, a dreadful specter attacks next to them and attacks immediately. A 2 to 6, recover 1 used spell card of their choice, or recover 1 lost BP or MP, their choice. The Dark Conjuring. 1 cultist per hero appears at the dungeon entrance and plays immediately. Now we're going to get into a rule that is prevalent on many of the cards in this deck. If a sorcerer table, tomb, bonfire, or spirit rack is on the board, they ignore the heroes and try to reach the closest item. This really sets up a sort of betrayal at the house on the hill kind of vibe for the dungeon. As soon as one of them reaches the desired room, they perform a dark ritual and a skeleton appears next to each cultist. After that, they hunt the heroes. Like I said, we do have a few cards that have this sort of specific objective for the monsters on it, and it really changes the vibe of the whole dungeon deck. With the Blood Ritual, all of the cultists who appear at the beginning of the dungeon who reach the torture rack, sorcerer table, alchemy table, or whatever other defined piece of furniture will perform a dark ritual that allows all cultists to gain +2 BP. The Astral Summoning will cause a gargoyle to appear. This one I like because each cultist in the room will roll a die until one of them rolls a 6, so they pretty much go in there and just roll for their turn. I can't imagine that this means they just continuously roll, because then there'd be no point in rolling. You go in there, you roll your die, turn ends. On your next turn, you roll again, turn ends. That's as an action, so they're in there busy summoning. You could go in there and wipe them out. The ravenous raptors. 2 raptors appear at the dungeon entrance and play immediately. Every turn they target the closest hero or monster except other raptors. So you could read this to say that they won't attack a raptor that is an animal ally, an animal companion. Although I'm sure that that's not rules as intended, but that would be a fun way of interpreting that card. A dark portal is opening mid-air with this card, the Gate of Darkness. A warlock may seal the portal immediately by discarding one of their spells, or any hero may do the same by flinging a vial of holy water to the portal before it opens completely. If the portal opens, undead spirits emerge from the gate. Place 1 dreadful specter next to each hero, and they play immediately. The Dread Tide causes 2 abominations to appear at the dungeon entrance and play immediately. Water begins to flood the dungeon floor. All water-related creatures, such as abominations, roll 1 AD, plus 1 AD, while the hero's movement is reduced by -1. You can at any time reverse the tide and end the effect by discarding a water spell. A druid may do the same by discarding one of their spells. I don't want to go through every card in this deck because I would like for them to be a surprise. I just want to go through a few to show you the versatility and utility of this specific deck, especially when you compare it to the old Dungeon Events deck. And if you haven't seen my video on the old Dungeon Events deck, or the collection in which that deck is presented, you go check it out. I'll try to link it in the description below. The Ogre Merchant. The heroes meet a friendly Ogre Merchant. Draw 7 equipment cards to see what he has to offer. If the heroes don't buy anything, roll a die. On a skull, the Ogre becomes hostile and plays immediately, attacking the hero with the highest BP score. Otherwise, whether the heroes buy something or not, the merchant leaves the dungeon before the hero's turn. We have a Goblin Merchant as well. Draw 5 equipment cards to see what he has to offer. He even offers a special deal. If you buy 3 items, the cheapest one is free. Now, this one is one of my favorites. Predictably, the Goblin Festival. The goblins in the dungeon celebrate the Green Moon holiday. They won't harm the heroes until the end of the quest. Heroes and monsters may move through goblins. Every time a hero enters a room with a goblin, they are offered a green cookie, a green moon cookie. If they eat it, they must roll a die. On a skull, the hero loses 1 BP, and on a white shield, the hero recovers 1 lost BP. If a hero refuses a cookie or harms a goblin, all goblins become hostile. Irritated by the goblin's glee, orcs and abominations roll +1 attack dice until the end of the quest. I like this one because it changes pretty much potentially the entire board. Like, every room on the board could have a goblin, and yet its effects are reversible immediately. And also yet the effects are reversible except for the aggravated orcs and abominations. I would imagine that they continue to stay irritated, which gives this card some risk factor. Do you keep it in play? Do you just accept that it's going to be irritated orcs and abominations for the rest of the quest and not eat the goblin cookies? Or do you risk the body point reduction from eating bad cookies? Betrayal causes a random hired mercenary who was secretly loyal to the forces of darkness ambushes the group with a band of orcs. They immediately attack the hero who hired them, becoming adjacent if needed, while 1 orc appears to next to the other heroes, and they play immediately. You draw a new dungeon event card if there are no hired mercenaries in play, and by the way, you draw a new dungeon event card if the objective on the card is something that isn't applicable to the quest that you're playing anyway. We will go ahead and just draw a random one from the top half now, so I can show you one more. Lucky Find, Gemstone. A randomly selected hero spots a shiny gem worth 1d6 times 50 coins, showing you that not all of these are bad, and indeed there are a couple that have the classic nothing happens gimmick. So, moving on to the next deck. I want to say that that is a pretty cool deck. I really like dungeon events myself, although I can understand if they're not everybody's cup of tea. You gotta have something to do on the board while your heroes are just running around searching for secret doors and traps and treasure like a bunch of losers. 46 cards in this next deck. The heroic skills, 2. 45 cards plus the instruction card. For those of you who forgot how to use these cards, this deck includes 35 heroic skills cards and 10 Axian Heroes cards. The following rules apply. Skills for all means any hero can learn these skills. 1 between quests means a hero can learn 1 skill after a quest. Increasing costs means learning your first skill costs 500 coins, learning your second costs 1,000, and learning your third costs 1,500. Up to 3 means a hero can learn up to 3 skills. 2 per category means skills are divided into 3 categories: adventuring, battle, and lore, as noted noted on each card. A hero can learn no more than 2 skills from the same category. And requisites: in order to learn a skill, the hero must possess the listed requisites, as well as no duplicates. A hero can only learn each skill once and cannot learn a skill that is equivalent to a skill or ability they already possess from other sources. Change your mind: you can unlearn any of your current skills for free, but will have to pay to learn new ones. And skills die: if the hero dies, their skills are lost. Nice little QR code that you might be able to scan if my focus isn't too terrible there. And indeed, we do have 10 Axian hero cards and the 35 heroic skills cards. This is Axian Spice's way of allowing you to build your own hero. We have 5 identical blue bordered cards and 5 identical red bordered cards. They are the same. You just pass one out to each of the heroes who are creating their own hero. And there's 5 here, I imagine, just in case you are able to accommodate a 5-player game. But by passing this card out, you are the Axian hero, the most versatile hero. And like I said, these are identical, so they're all the same. They're all going to have the same stats. They will have different pictures on the front, but we'll get to those in just a second. Before your first quest, you must select 2 skills from the AxianQuest Heroic Skills deck. And that could mean this deck. I imagine you could go ahead and retroactively include the first Heroic Skills deck as well. These are your background skills, and you learn them for free. During your career, you can learn up to 3 more skills like any other hero. At the standard cost, instead of 2, you may possess up to 3 skills from the same category, including your background skills. You may possess up to 2 path skills. You may unlearn skills like any other hero, but you must always possess at least 2. Now, it isn't required to be an Axian hero to learn the heroic skills. You can be any hero, but the Axian hero has a little bit of a lift on some of the limitations. And the Axian hero has movement of 2 dice, as always, 2 attack dice, 2 defend dice, 6 body points, and 3 mind points. You have a starting weapon of a short sword. Now, the art is by Dean Spencer, who actually has a lot of stock art available for commission on DriveThruRPG. Some of it, to me, I'm going to be completely honest with you, looks questionable. Like at first glance, I would just tag this as AI, but Dean does have quite a bit of posts of adamant stances against AI. So I would have to imagine that some of the more bizarre art choices are intentional. We've also got art by Alec Adams, And the stats on these cards, they're all the same. The picture is different just to provide you with a sense of differentiation and flavor per hero who wants to be an Axian hero. We have another set here, the blue cards. And the flavor text on the back is the exact same as the first set that we saw. However, the stats are a little bit different. You trade 1 body point for 1 mind point with the blue set. All the other stats the same. Our art looks like this. And again, I do question some of this regardless of the statements made. Some of it just, it raises the flags. But I believe somebody when they say they didn't use it. All right, heroic skills. 2. We have battle skills, which are red cards. We have adventure skills, which are green. And we have lore skills, which are blue. You can be sure that these skills are not going to be the same as in the first deck, such as sword mastery. When you attack with a sword that can be used with a shield and you are not using a shield, you may reroll 1 non-skull result. If the sword grants 3 or more AD, you may reroll up to 2 non-skull results. Requisites, 6 or more BP. I like this one because it allows you some versatility if you can do better by equipping a shield, but you just don't happen to have one equipped at the moment. I say you can do better. You could do better. I see that you're wielding a one-handed sword. Is that because you think you weigh too much? Because I don't think you do. Raging Strike. Once per game, when you perform an attack action with a melee weapon or unarmed, you add to your weapon's dice a number of AD equal to your lost BP. That is kind of incredible. You regain the use of the skill if you recover all your lost BP. Requisites 8 or more BP. So run into the linguistics/vagueness problem in the last heroic skills deck that this should say 8 or more max BP, but that clarification is of course all over both the comments section of the last video I did on heroic skills as well as in other key places, but I do think it should be something on the card again still more. Regardless, if you are a hero who has 8 or more starting BP and you lose 7 of your BP and then you have this skill and you use it, that means you're going to wield, I don't know, you could wield any weapon, a staff, a throwing dagger, and you're going to roll at least 8 attack dice on that dagger. The Raging Strike is incredibly overpowered, but still, it does come with a cost, and it has a pretty stringent requirement, so I think that that's really cool. Really, really cool. Hurl. As part of an attack action with a melee weapon or unarmed, if you don't have a shield equipped, you may move your opponent to a free square adjacent to them or to you, diagonal included, or switch places with them. You may then roll your attack even if you are no longer adjacent to your opponent. Ethereal opponents and opponents that occupy more than one square are immune. This is a very smart restriction to include on the card. I really like that. Assault. If you attack with a melee weapon or unarmed, an adjacent opponent that was not adjacent to you at the beginning of your turn, you roll +1 attack dice against it. I like this a lot too. I do like these. Battle Hymn. Once per game, you may at any time chant your hymn and cause all heroes and allies to roll +1 AD or +1 DD until your next turn. You must choose one effect and it applies to all targets. Multiple battle hymns on same targets don't stack. All right, one more and then we'll move on to another deck, but Defy. Correct this, Ash. All right, one more, and then we'll move on to another deck or another sub-deck within the heroic skills. Once per game, you may at any time select an adjacent opponent with Defy. You roll +1 AD and +1 DD against them, and they must choose you as the target of their attacks, spells, etc. if they can. If you defeat them, you recover 1 lost BP or MP. Opponents with 0 MP cannot be targeted by this skill. That's pretty strong. That is a pretty strong card. You are automatically targeting somebody. Kind of like your nemesis, your rival, and you are emboldened to attack and defend against them, and they have to focus on you. And if you defeat them, you actually recover 1 of your lost points. That's nuts. I like that a lot. A couple of others such as Shield Mastery and Focused Fighting. We will go now into the adventuring skills, and we'll start with Personal Armory. This will give you a taste of kind of what this deck is all about. You begin every quest with 1 weapon or armor card of your choice from the equipment deck. You may use the item as if you owned it for the duration of the quest. It cannot be sold and cannot be kept after the end of the quest, but you may choose the same item again for the following quest, and there are no requisites for this. Path of the Berserker. You may not use shields and ranged weapons, but you may still use thrown weapons. When you use your action to attack with a weapon, you may immediately use another weapon to attack a different opponent if within reach. Both weapons must be one-handed. In other words, they can be used with a shield. You can only possess 1 path skill. That's one of the requisites here. Path of the Berserker. Unless, of course, you are an Axian hero, and you can possess up to 2 path skills. Path of the Colossus. You roll -1 die for movement. Your movement is never reduced below 1 die. Your maximum BP is increased by 2. Path of the Beaming Pillar. You may not use helmets, shields, and metal body armor. You may only attack with a staff or unarmed. When wielding a staff, you gain +1 defense die. When attacking with the staff, you gain +1 attack die per each battle skill you possess. Want to look at Path of the Arcanist. You may not use helmets, shields, and metal body armor. Your maximum MP is increased by 2. You may use all the items that only wizards are allowed to use, and you are allowed to learn heroic skills that list the ability to cast spells as a requirement. I want to highlight how this hero creation system works so that you can actually emulate existing heroes. We have Path of the Skirmisher here. You cannot wear more than 1 piece of armor. You may move through enemies and furniture, but must end your movement, obviously, on a free square, and you ignore hindering terrain. Every time you suffer damage from an attack or spell, you can immediately move up to 1d6 squares. If you roll a 6, you also completely avoid and negate that damage. This one is fairly overpowered. I was going to say this one makes you a lot more like the rogue, and it does because of the first, or actually second point on the card. But the third point is just nuts. You can do this for free every single time you get attacked. That means you have a 1 in 6 chance of completely negating damage, and you can move out of danger if you wish. And that's if you suffer damage. The enemy could attack you and also just miss. But you can't wear more than 1 piece of armor. It's plate mail, and that's it. Path of the Healer. You may not use helmets, shields, and metal body armor. Every time you use a spell, ability, or heroic skills that heal. Wow. I'm gonna hit you with that remix there. Let's start that over. Every time you use a spell, ability, or heroic skill that heals lost BP, it heals +1 BP or +1 MP, your choice. A non-path skill in the adventuring skills deck is fast recovery. Every time you receive healing from any source, you recover an extra BP or MP, your choice. And Bag of Tricks, once per game. You may use 1 Caltrops, Smoke Bomb, Toolkit, or Holy Water card as if you owned it. We have other very creative ones like Ogre Ally, Animal Ally, and Mercenary Leader. I appreciate these and I respect them. We'll move on now to the lore skills. Elemental Form. being our introductory one. Once per game, you may discard an elemental skill to become a creature of that same element until the beginning of your next turn. It's not considered an action. While transformed, you roll a number of AD and DD equal to your current MP. You can decide to discard a second spell of the same element to extend the duration for one extra turn only once. Air, fire, and water forms may move through enemies and furniture. In addition, depending on the element, you get additional abilities, or traits rather. Spirit Walk. Once per game, you may become ethereal until the beginning of your next turn. While ethereal, you may not open doors but may move into unexplored areas. You can decide to lose 1 MP to extend the duration for one extra turn. I like Inspire. With inspiring speech, prayer, or song, once per game, you may at any time inspire all heroes and allies, including yourself, in the same room as you. All targets recover 1 lost BP and 1 lost MP. It looks like pretty much... No, I read that as BP. I was going to say pretty much anybody can do it, but you have to have at least 4 mind points. So like the Barbarian is not going to be delivering any rousing speeches in the game of HeroQuest, unfortunately. Fellow heroes, you must do good. Do better. Be like Barbarian. So rousing. Couldn't have said it better myself. I'm inspired. The Curse of Doom allows you to, at any time, curse an enemy that you can see so they permanently roll a -1 attack die and defense die, with a minimum of 1 die. Multiple Curses of Doom on the same target don't stack. We've got other lore skill cards such as Undead Servant and Exalt, as well as Enchant, and there are many more in the lore skills deck in the Heroic Skills 2 deck, part of the AxianQuest decks. There's more! Now it's time to finally get into the Interludes deck. Its cards will basically supplement the way that you play HeroQuest, not fundamentally changing it, but providing you with some in-between quest actions. You probably guessed that, but let's read from the card how to use these. These cards represent the interesting events that may occur between quests. Choose 1 hero before the quest. Before beginning a new quest, after they've recovered all lost BP and MP and recovered all their spells and abilities, the heroes choose one of them to draw 1 interlude card. All heroes or 1 hero. The effects of the card usually apply to all heroes. Some cards apply to only 1 hero, the one who has drawn the card. Draw a second card. This is optional. If the first card drawn only affects 1 hero, a second hero can be chosen to draw another card. Consequences stay. Lost BP and MP, used spells, and any other consequences of interlude cards carry over to the upcoming quest. Ambush. Some interludes are marked as ambush. To represent the battlefield, use the large central room or suitable outdoor tile if available. This says max 20 by 20 squares. That would be an enormous tile. That would be a huge tile. Place the heroes at the center of the area, then place the monsters listed on the card adjacent to heroes. If playing without a Zorgan player, the oldest player places and plays the monsters. They play immediately. You can flee an ambush if you're at the edge of the ambush area, and then roll a die. You either remain in the area and may play normally, flee the ambush, or remain in the area and miss the turn. And finally, for expansions, if you draw a card that requires contents from an unavailable expansion or AxianQuest deck, ignore the card and draw a new one. Always very friendly with the accessibility. Alright, Interludes. Ambush. Undead monsters ambush the group. Depending on the number of heroes, we can outline what the monsters actually are. And if available, all skeletons are archers. Immediately dangerous. Ambush. Monstrous humanoids ambush the group. It could be dreadful enemies as well. Or evil elves. Or goblins and orcs. There are a number of other ambush cards as well. The Ogre. The heroes meet an ogre mercenary who is willing to accompany them for the upcoming quest for 80 coins or 1 ogre grog. If they refuse to hire him, they must battle the ogre as an ambush. We have the opportunity to hire a sellsword, a swordsman mercenary, or a hunter. You can see where this is going. The Jinx. 1 hero crosses their path with a wandering witch. The hero must roll less than their MP with 1 die, or they will roll -1 DD for the upcoming quest. As an alternative, a warlock may automatically dispel the Jinx by immediately discarding 1 spell. The Fairy Market. See, these aren't all bad, and the heroes stumble upon the mysterious Fairy Market, where artifacts can be bought for 500 coins or traded for a permanent loss of 1 MP. Draw 1d6 artifacts from the AxianQuest artifacts deck to determine which artifacts are for sale. And if you don't have that deck, draw a new interlude card. Let's say I rolled a 3. I just want to follow through with this. Let's grab the 3 artifacts. You can buy the Murderous Sword, the Boots of Gentle Fall, or the Shield of Luck. I love the Murderous Sword. You attack with 3 AD. Each skull the opponent fails to defend inflicts 2 BP instead of 1. Insane. Unfortunately, that does mean that if the heroes at this point own 2 or more artifacts, the Astral Hunter will appear. The Itinerant Masters. A cadre of Itinerant Masters visits the town. Draw 4 cards from the Heroic Skills deck. Each hero may train 1 of those skills for half the normal cost. If you don't have the Heroic deck, draw a new interlude card. The Wandering Priests will bless the hero who drew him for an additional 1 AD for the upcoming quest, or offer a vial of holy water for a small donation of 200 coins. We have an ogre who demands a toll. Then we have cards like this one, which I find very interesting. A simple job. The Duke of Old Keep asks the heroes to escort his messenger on a short journey. He offers a 50 coins reward per hero. If the heroes accept, draw 3 interlude cards to represent the journey. If you draw an ambush card, the messenger is placed like a hero. During their first turn, the monsters ignore him. The messenger plays after all the heroes and moves in a random direction. After the first turn, all the monsters will try to kill him. If he dies, the heroes get no reward. And the messenger has 2 BP, and who cares what else he has. You gotta protect this weak bean. The Wandering Herbalist will sell heroes items from the alchemy deck. The Peddler will sell equipment cards. Greedy Mercenaries will reverse sell. Though I guess it's not reverse, so they're not robbing you. Each mercenary hired by the heroes demands an extra 10 coins, or they will just abandon the quest. I like this one, the Brewmasters Festival. The Brewmasters and Alchemist Guilds are holding their festival. All heroes may buy potions for half the normal price. Here's one that's interesting, the Ravaged Tower. As they travel, the heroes find a watchtower that has recently been ravaged by monsters. One hero notices something among the ruins. If the hero decides to go and take the item, draw an equipment card to determine what it is. The hero must also roll a die. On a skull, the hero is ambushed by 2 orcs. And yes, that means the single hero is going to be placed here in the battlefield, where they will fight the 2 orcs on their own. War on Orcs. As the raids of the orcs become bolder, the captain of the town guard offers 20 coins for each orc defeated by the heroes during the upcoming quest. We've got other cards for Dotted Mushroom Finding, the Evil Gaze, the Turncoat Goblin. I like this little guy. The group meet a sneaky goblin who is willing to reveal the other monster's secrets. If paid 50 coins, the goblin will reveal the content and position of the room with more monsters in the upcoming quest. All the contents of the room are placed on the board. There are additional rules if you are playing with the AxianQuest Infinite Dungeon deck. Ruined Armor, 4-Leaf Clover, the Goblin Thief, and more. So I have cited AxianQuest as one of my favorite, Axian Spice, as one of my favorite homebrew creators for HeroQuest. I think that Axian Spice does it right. The art is commissioned or it's found. The skills seem highly play-tested. There's a measure of if you take, you must also give to the cards. I think that they're just really well done. They look nice too, and the fact that there are so many decks that are compatible with one another and built to be modular so that you can just use whatever you want for your upcoming game or use the Infinite Dungeon deck, it just makes it all seem so much more cohesive. So huge props to Axian Spice, and a big thank you to Axian Spice for sending me these most recent 3 decks for me to peruse. Brave Heroes, please comment down below. Are you already using the Axian decks? Did you know that there is a 7-deck deal going on the Drive-Thru RPG page, which will be linked down below? Did this sell you on the idea of using Homebrew if you haven't already, or Axian Spice's AxianQuest decks if you haven't already got them? Or do you have other thoughts? Let me know down below, and I will see you in the next exciting adventure. Until then, have a great rest of your day, and bye for now.